Hello everyone, welcome to another video about Wizards of the Coast. I think this is the last one that I will make personally. A lot of people are making a ton of content about, even still, about the OGL and stuff like that, and I respect that completely. I support the ORC and I support the ORC license, and I support everybody who's moving in a direction away from Dungeons and Dragons or away from Wizards of the Coast specifically. I think that's great. I don't really want to spend all of my time talking about it. Wizards has reversed course almost 100% from the decision that I was talking about in my last video, and they have put the 5.1 SRD under a Creative Commons license, and I think they even expanded it a little bit. So that's a huge victory for us. Really quickly, though, I just wanted to talk about how, even though this is a victory, it doesn't reverse the damage in terms of the damage done to Wizards' relationship with us, the community. And secondly, I just wanted to talk about the dangers of monopoly a little bit, and how monopolies are always bad, and how this situation that we faced is inevitable and is basically going to come up again because of the power of monopolies like the one that Wizards of the Coast thankfully is sort of too foolish to maintain, but does really sort of have, other than a few noteworthy competitors. So, in order to understand what's going on here properly, we have to understand a little bit about the history of the OGL and Wizards of the Coast. Third edition was pretty spectacularly popular, or at least it was way more popular than any edition of D&D had been in the past, and it resulted in some spin-off titles. I'm sure that you have all heard of Neverwinter Nights, or at least I hope some of you have heard of Neverwinter Nights. It was pretty remarkable at the time. I'm sure a lot of you, more of you, have heard of Knights of the Old Republic, right? I'm sure that we can come up, if we try hard enough, we can come up with a fair number of properties that were based, if not exclusively on third edition, but that were, based around it. Wizards of the Coast was doing gangbusters for, compared to what it had earned in the past. And the hobby was doing really great as well. A lot of people were playing it. To this day, I meet people who still say that their favorite edition of Dungeons and Dragons is third edition. I meet people who, I was 8 or 9, maybe 10 years old. I forget exactly. I was a very young kid when third edition was originally released. And I meet people who could not have possibly been alive for the release of that edition and who still say that it's their favorite edition. Pathfinder Pathfinder first edition was originally adapted from third edition. There are a lot of threads in the tabletop role-playing community, the tabletop role-playing sphere, that draw back to third edition, and its wild popularity can still be felt today. And then Wizards came along and they fucked it all up. They decided, hey, we want to make more money from this, and they released fourth edition. And it was clear to a lot of people that fourth edition had the characteristics that it had, including a new license under which it was released, not the OGL, not a license saying, hey, we're friendly with creators and we want people to take this and use it as they see fit. No, a new one saying, hey, step off, this is ours, and if you touch it, we're going to make money off of you. And nobody liked that. I'm happy that they used it as an opportunity to sort of experiment with some new mechanics. We saw some interesting new mechanics in 4th edition that I think are really worth talking about sometime. But in terms of what it did to the community, it sort of really damaged player trust, and it ultimately created Paizo and Pathfinder. It essentially, what Wizards did at this point was that Dungeons and Dragons was such a niche thing that there was essentially nobody really competing with the D&D brand for control of the market. There was basically just no other people on the horizon. There was some other publishers. We have some other systems that you might be familiar with, GURPS and the D6 system, and White Wolf Publishing and like D10 and like there's some other competitors, but simply put, they were just not on the map compared to Dungeons and Dragons and like the illustrious D20 system. And then when 4th edition was released, it became clear to a lot of people that Wizards wanted to play hardball, and they wanted to basically not lose their position as absolute overlord of the market, but instead of, like, that was always a position that had come from just sort of the natural love that people had for D&D. D&D was more or less the only thing for a long time. It was like the first of its kind or whatever, and people just loved it, and they loved the company that was responsible for shepherding it. And so they just saw no reason to go elsewhere. But the moment that Wizards decided, hey, we want to treat this like a cash cow, it created their largest competitor on the market, I would say, which is Paizo at the moment. The point I'm trying to get here is that this happened before. Now they've done it again, and it has created this huge backlash and shockwave. And I'm here to tell you that no matter what you think the state of things are currently, they are going to do it again. Even if it takes them 20 more years of waiting, they're going to do something like this again. They always will, because we have an economy which supports being greedy. Like, I don't want to spell it out for anybody too clearly who's not already on the obviously correct page of history, but this is going to keep happening. Video games, gaming, tabletop games, everything is under threat of becoming really shitty and really over-commodified. You know, I grew up in an age where such a thing as DLC was unheard of. My parents wouldn't even, when I was a kid and they were buying me video games, my parents wouldn't even think of frickin' giving me, I don't know, a bunch of extra money that I could spend on just random peripheral crap. Nobody could conceive of paying for a game in installments, in chunks, more than like an actual market price of just a standard AAA title. Like, I sadly admit that I'm like a fan of Warhammer products, but if you want to buy all of the pieces that you need to play the entire campaign of like one of the Total War games, you're looking at hundreds of dollars, which if you think about it is absolutely absurd. So like, I don't know why I chose that example, because I don't know, there's plenty of other like actual D&D branded titles to complain about, but just don't at me. The point I'm trying to get at here, though, is that this is, not going to get any better unless we continue to remain as vigilant and as proactive as we did during this case. Mostly when a company announces something like Wizards did, there's just nothing that can be done. People just roll over and accept the power of the corporate overlord, and they let them dictate terms, and they let them set an absurd price, and they just kind of roll with it. In this case, the community didn't just say, hey, I'm going to burn down my D&D Beyond account and run away from your game and play someone else's game and never look back. Not only did we do that, but we created many viable alternatives and supported the creation of many viable alternatives. And so we can't stop doing that. The fight isn't over, and nothing has changed. We have to continue making, as I said in my first video on this topic, new games. That's all I really wanted to cover. Thank you for tuning in. Support the ORC license. Support Paizo. Even though they are also a giant corporation, just do it because it's convenient and good, and because, like, I don't know, they make a pretty good product. I'm going to make my own deliberate knockoff of Dungeons and Dragons like pretty soon. It's probably going to be mediocre at best, but stay tuned for it anyways. Thanks!